Hi, my name is Jeremy Goldschmidt and I'm the founder and CEO of RentBetter. Welcome back to our webinar series. Today we're going to cover the topic of tenant onboarding, which is a super exciting topic because it usually happens after you've been searching for someone to rent your property. And it's basically a step closer to being able to secure a tenant, collect your rent, and actually get a return on your investment. So this is usually the time where I guess it's the culmination of all the things that you've been doing in the lead up to it. And so we're going to cover the sort of 4 key steps that one needs to do at this stage, which is the lease agreement, setting up the bond, organising an early first payment if necessary, and the condition report. Now, I'll go through each of those steps. There's a precursor to this, which we do cover off in a different session, which relates to the application and tenant check process and selecting the right tenant. But assuming you've done all of that and that you've got the right person in place, you're going to want to create your lease agreement, which is that first step. Now, each state and territory has their own legislation that guides tenancies, and so you're going to have a separate document or a specific lease agreement for each of those jurisdictions. You can find those on the RentBetter platform or on the RentBetter website. And what you'll be doing is taking the information from that application for their details, meaning the name of the tenants or joint tenants, the the email address, their phone number, and you're going to want to have just a quick discussion with them to cover off things like the amount that they'll pay. So are they going to pay higher or lower than what was asked? The duration of the lease, so what's the start date, what's the end date, which is obviously the duration, the amount that they'll pay, as we said, and then the frequency of those payments. So will it be weekly, fortnightly, or monthly? Some areas of the country like to do monthly more than anywhere else. We typically find that that's a complicated calculation for a lot of people, and so the day of the month that you pay tends to change, whether it's a weekday or a weekend each month, and just calculating, getting back to the day rate and then turning that into a monthly rate and then making sure it's equal across the year sometimes trips people up. So we find that that's a complicated one. Weekly, we tend to find a bit too frequent for people, whereas, fortnightly is sort of the just right one. It tends to align to a lot of people's pay schedules. It's enough time for people to pay and for you to keep an eye on things. So we typically recommend a fortnightly payment schedule. Assuming you've agreed all of that with your tenant, you're going to be able to populate the lease agreement, set up all the information that's required, and you're going to also want to decide what your bond amount is. Now, typically that's about 4 weeks. We'll go through the setup of that in a second, but that's also going to be included in your lease agreement. And you're going to send that off to the tenant. Now, how you send that, again, is up to you. We, through the platform, typically see people will send the lease agreement. It can be done electronically through the platform. The tenant can then set up their account, view the agreement, and sign it electronically, and then you'll all have it in one place. It's a pretty simple and straightforward process, which we see a lot of people using today. Once the tenant's signed the agreement, and that's really the big first step here, because there's a agreement in place and you and the tenants or joint tenants have agreed, the next step is then to organise the bond. You'll find on the RentBetter platform that there's some guidance. Each state and territory, again, has its own bond authority and their own processes. Some are more sophisticated where the tenant can pay directly. In other states and geographies, you're actually going to be the one collecting it and handing it or transferring it to the bond authority. Again, you can find the relevant forms and steps through the RentBetter platform. But once you've signed a lease agreement, you've collected the bond, the tenant's really committed, right? That bond acts as a deterrent. It's a security and a protection against damage or any significant issues through the lease. So once you've signed that lease agreement, you've got a legal document. Once the bond has been collected or paid, there's a real financial commitment. So you're in a good place. The next step is to determine whether you want to collect an early first payment. Now, assuming that the lease is not going to start for another month or so, as an extra step of commitment, many landlords will wish to organise an early first payment. And you just want to do that. Again, you can do it through the platform, but you just want to have a chat with the tenant and make sure that you're comfortable, they're comfortable with what's required. And it just sort of gives you that first step that they're going to actually pay the rent on time. The final step is then the condition report. And again, many ways to do this, many templates that exist out there. There is a version on the RentBetter platform that again adds all the efficiency of having it in one place, where you can go in, take all the photos, describe all the sort of damage and issues that are or hopefully are not in each room and area of the property. Save a copy of that, send it to the tenant through the platform. They can review, add their comments, save and sign it as well. So it just gives you the efficiency of having everything in one place. So on the basis that you and your tenant have agreed, have signed a lease agreement, have collected the bond, have organised an early first payment and have done a condition report, you're in a pretty good position to start your tenancy off in the right way and to have truly onboarded your tenant to your lease and to your property. Thanks very much. Happy to answer any questions. If you'd like to email us at info@rentbetter.com.au, we'd be very happy to help further. Thanks again.